The Dimensionator. It was created by 8 brilliant minds in Lombax history. It was paired with an extremely rare and valuable trans-dimensional comet called the Saronic Shard. It was discovered by the Lombaxes when it fell through the stratosphere of Fastoon. It was studied and developed at the Center of Advanced Lombax Research. There are remote locations on Riken 5 and Sargasso. What this device does, it sends people to other dimensions. The Kragmites, for example, they were sent to Dimension X249, a dying star. Tachyon was also sent there, eventually. The Lombaxes used the device to travel to another dimension. Now, how is this device used? It's a hat, pretty much. You pull the trigger, it activates, and you shout out the name of the location which you want to travel to. It can be taken with or left behind. For example, when a portal opened in the end of Tools of Destruction when Ratchet was about to face Tachyon, Tachyon still had the Dimensionator on him. Plus, Ratchet used the Dimensionator to return home, so he pretty much took it with him. Ratchet's father, Kaidan, was the keeper of the Dimensionator. He refused to travel to the other dimension. He wanted to keep his family safe, and he wanted to make sure that the device wouldn't fall in the wrong hands. Here's one very big question though. If the device can be taken with you, why didn't he decide to take his wife and kid to the other dimension, and while at it, take the device with him? Something tells me it was too late. When he came back to try and save his wife, it was too late. She was already killed. Fortunately, Ratchet was hidden in a very safe location. Unfortunately, Kaidan was too weak. He probably thought of sending Ratchet to the other dimension at that point. But since he was on the point of dying, he told himself, this galaxy needs a hero, and son, you will be that hero. That's one thing I can come up with. How about you guys? What do you think? Leave all your thoughts in the comments. So, the Dimensionator was hidden on Riken 5. Kaidan had probably left it there. Okay, so you're telling me Kaidan had enough time to go back to Recon 5 and hide the Dimensionator? Let's just assume that his wife was already gone at that point. He had enough time to take Ratchet to Recon 5 and hide the Dimensionator. He used all of his remaining energy to send Ratchet to the Solana galaxy. Now, where exactly did Kaidan hide the Dimensionator? Perhaps in the room which we saw in Tools. The door Ratchet was able to get open. Once that door opened, the Dimensionator wasn't there. All we know is that such device was relocated by Max Apogee. It got relocated to Jacindu. Talking about Max Apogee, this brings me back to the whole situation with Angela Cross. Max Apogee and Angela are both in the Lombax dimension. That's what a lot of us are thinking right now. But at this point, guys, it's considered a fact. Artemis Zog mentioned this in issue number 5 and on the news broadcast in A Crack in Time. Well, the news broadcast was more about theorizing and stuff like that, but I do believe they are in the Lombax dimension. Max Apogee, he's a collector, explorer, right? He was looking for the Lombax secret at one point, aka the Dimensionator. Now, Apogee eventually discovered the Lombax artifact, which showed the location, the map of the Dimensionator. Once the space pirates invaded his station and took the artifact, Max relocated the device on Jacindu. He didn't want to risk anything, okay, we get that. But only Lombaxes can activate the artifact. We saw that in Tools, right? Okay, let's just stick with the idea that Apogee probably told himself, hey, they'll figure out a way to activate the artifact at one point, without the need of a Lombax. Even if they can't activate the artifact straight away, I'll still try and relocate the device. That's probably what was going on in his mind at that point. Now, talking about needing a Lombax to activate the artifact, this brings me to Angela. So, according to the news broadcast in A Crack in Time, Angela Cross disappeared for almost 3 years. Here's something that doesn't make sense to me. We assume they both escaped at the same time, right? But supercomputer Iris stated that Apogee disappeared 8 years ago, and this was mentioned in Tools of Destruction. So shouldn't the radio have mentioned 8 years ago? Why 3? It's not like they discovered her disappearance 3 years ago. That's not what they said. She's been missing for almost 3 years. Technically speaking, guys, there's a 1-year gap between Tools and A Crack in Time. So technically the radio should have mentioned 9 years ago. And how can we explain this 1 year apart situation? Sigmund had mentioned that Nefarious was trying to hack into the Orvish chamber for over a year. And that's when Clank was inside the Great Clock. So if the news person is not mistaken, there's one thing I can think of. Now, how did Apogee activate the artifact? Didn't he save Angela? Yup, he did. So we can all assume assume Angela was the one who activated the artifact, and thanks to her, the location of the Dimensionator got revealed. So when that happened, they both went to Recon 5, and Angela was able to open the door just like Ratchet. But if all Lombaxes are able to open that door, it kinda sounds risky. Or there's a reason why Angela was also able to open the door. I did mention in the beginning that the Dimensionator was created by 8 brilliant minds in Lombax history. What if Caden and Angela's mother, Lorna, were part of those 8 brilliant minds? We don't know much about Lorna. All we know is that she went to school with Ratchet's mom on Wikipedia. Lorna could have been studying the Dimensionator, who knows? And could she possibly be in the Lombax dimension as well? Sounds interesting, doesn't it? Okay, with that being said, they found the Dimensionator inside that room. They took it, right? But something is very confusing. If they used the device to travel to the Lombax dimension, how did they relocate it in the first place? Okay, perhaps they used it on Jacindu, right? If so, they would still have to hide it later. How is that possible? I mean, since the Dimensionator was in Tools of Destruction, it wasn't taken with them. So here's what I think. Apogee used it first, and this happened 8 years prior to Tools. What about Angela? She's the one who perhaps relocated the device on Jacindu, and she used the device years later. Okay, still, if Angela used the device, how did she relocate it? How did she hide it? Perhaps she befriended a Kerchu. Ratchet did say that the Kerchu they battled was protecting the device. Okay, I know some of you are confused right now. What was Angela doing this whole time? She knew that Tachyon was coming after her. Why take the risk and remain in Ratchet's galaxy? Who knows at this point? So maybe that's why the news explained that she disappeared for almost 3 years and not 9 years. Apogee escaped, but Angela remained in Ratchet's galaxy for some time. Or here's a situation which is more likely, I guess. Here's what was mentioned by Iris, word per word. Max Apogee, famed explorer of the Polaris Galaxy, discovered the Dimensionator using a Lombax artifact 8 cycles ago, and relocated it when the map was stolen by space pirates. Current status, missing. So I guess he got some help from Angela, you know, to activate the artifact and find the Dimensionator. So they did find the Dimensionator, but perhaps they decided to use it years later. So I guess this could explain why Angela Cross went missing for almost 3 years. They both went missing for almost 3 years. But Talwyn did say that the space pirates raided the station years ago. Years ago sounds more like 8 years ago to me. Here's another scenario if we stick with the idea that they both disappeared 9 years ago. Okay, they both opened the door on Recon 5. They perhaps saw 2 Dimensionators. Remember in the Kraken time, guys, when Azimuth mentioned there are no more Dimensionators? Perhaps there's more than one.
There are no more Dimensionators!
We see another Dimensionator in All For One. We see one Dimensionator in Clank's subconscious. Well, that one doesn't really count, but here's another one. Vendra Prague and Neftin came up with the cheap knockoff. They used that to bring the Nether to their dimension. So where am I going with this? Perhaps Angela and Apogee found 2 Dimensionators. They relocated one on Jacindu. As for the second one, they took it with them. That's the one they used to go to the Lombax dimension. I mean, it's better to only leave one behind, right? Why not take both with them? Well, one of them activated the Dimensionator. If they were to take, let's say, an object with them, the second Dimensionator, they would probably lose it. Who knows how these portals work? And if it got lost, who knows what hands it could have ended up in? Okay, if there were 2 Dimensionators, then why didn't they leave one in the testing facility? I mean, Lombaxes can only open the door. Well, Ratchet and Angela, I'm saying. They probably thought that it was still risky, you know, Ratchet was still in the dimension and Angela probably mentioned Ratchet, right? Since the space pirates had the artifact, they perhaps would have decoded it by now, and I don't think they wanted 50 space pirates in front of that door trying to break it open. And what about Max Apogee's starship in the Cerulean sector? It was apparently on autopilot and place of origin, Jacindu. So maybe they used the ship as a distraction. They knew they were being chased by people, perhaps Tachyon and the space pirates. So what they did is they sent the ship off to space, and it eventually ended up in the Cerulean sector. And once that was complete, they used the Dimensionator to leave the dimension. That's it. Now, have any of you ever paid attention to this? When Talwyn was reading out loud what was written on the door on Recon 5, without a tail, your journey ends here. Could that be like some sort of hint towards Angela Cross maybe? I mean, she doesn't have a tail apparently. Female Lombaxes don't have tails, according to the radio broadcast. Some still believe it's kinda weird that Angela doesn't have a tail. Some people think that her tail was shoved in her pants and going commando. Some people think she lost her tail during an experiment. Some believe that the stuff mentioned on the radio is a lie. Maybe Insomniac Games forgot to give a tail to Angela. Who knows at this point? Who knows what the developer was thinking? Oh, and the letters we noticed on the door do translate to tail, T-A-I-L. I just wanted to make sure, just for the fun of it. But these could just be writings and just represent the Lombaxes in general. It probably has nothing to do with Angela. And guys, this is it for the video. At first, this idea of the Lombax dimension sounded so simple. Okay, Max, Apogee, and Angela both used it to go to that dimension. But after doing some thinking, it sounds a bit confusing. How they relocated the device and stuff like that. The possibility of more than one Dimensionator existing. Anyways, I'm gonna leave the rest of the thinking to you guys. Leave all of your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, I've been Vivi and hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching and until next time.